Hi, welcome to Stoughton Media Access Corporation's live election results. I'm Jeffrey Pickette, the Program and News Director at SMAC, and I'm joined alongside Joseph Feaster, who is the host of Community Forum, a program that you can see weekly on Stoughton Media Access. We're here again to bring you live election results. It's just past 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday, April 7th, 2015. Some 30 minutes ago, the polls closed here in Stoughton, capping another annual town election. This town election had two contested races, a race for the Selectmen, where four candidates, Bob O'Regan, Cynthia Walsh, the two incumbents, and Bob Cohn and Peter Brown, were vying for two seats on the Board of Selectmen. And then there was another contested race for the school committee, where there were two candidates, incumbent, the chairman of that committee, Dr. Erdem Ural, and Molly Cochran. They were vying for a single seat on that committee. We will be bringing you those results precinct by precinct as the night goes on, so please stay tuned. Just to give you kind of a setup of how things are tonight, Joseph and I will be bringing you the results and commentary. We have Eric Stankiewicz inside running the control operation for us, as he does for all of the meetings here at Town Hall. Jordan L. Carey, a senior at Stoughton High School, is beside me off camera, helping to tabulate results. And we have probably the MVP of this production, Christine Iacobucci, is downstairs actually getting the results for us, and we'll be sending them up our way. So as soon as those results come in, we will be bringing them to you. There were no contested races this year for town meeting, and we can get started talking about that a little bit as we wait for the results to come in. You look at, I have specimen ballots here for all 8 precincts, and in years past you at least saw them all filled in, all of the slots filled in. If there were 7 slots open in like precincts 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6, you would at least see them filled out. It's always been tough to get 7 and 8 filled out, and 4 usually has an abundance. This year, there's 3 candidates on the ballot for precinct 1. There could be up to 12. In precinct 2, there's 3 candidates on the ballot for town meeting rep, and there could be 8. I mean, just to give you an idea, there's no contested races for town meeting. Before we get into that conversation, let's get our first results of the evening. These, bear with me as I look at my phone, but we have Precinct 7 results. Precinct 7 is from the West Elementary School. That's where Precinct 7 votes, and that's part of Central Street and part of Pearl Street to the Canton border, just to give you a general vicinity. For Selectmen in Precinct 7, Cynthia Walsh takes that precinct with 104 votes. That's 104 for Cynthia Walsh. Bob Cohn comes in second in that precinct with 88. He edged Bob O'Regan, who comes in third in that precinct with 84. And in fourth is Peter Brown with 55. So again, Walsh 104, Cohn 88, O'Regan 84, and Brown 55. For the school committee, Molly Cochran takes precinct 7 with 105 votes, Erdem Ural with 81, coming in 24 votes behind. Again, Cochran 105, Ural 81. So those are the precinct 7 results. So let's table our discussion about the town meeting and get right into these results. We have Cynthia Walsh and Bob Cohn coming in first for the first and second respectively for precinct 7. Bob O'Regan just a few votes behind in third place. Your take on those results, Joseph?
Well, I think that it's early,
Yes.
clearly, but certainly, I'm sure those candidates those who are leading are happy with those particular results. I think it's early to get a trend. I would like to see a few more precincts,
Sure.
certainly in order to get a flavor as to where the voters are going. I'm a little bit...
I'm disappointed with the turnout.
Well, you had wanted to defer the conversation on the town meeting representatives, and I think that, this is, it's been said that I think there's around 79 slots, or there's a high number of openings that are existing. As we know, we're entitled to 21 persons in each one of the precincts, and the majority of the precincts, and as you pointed out, 7 and 8 historically have been a problem in terms of getting people to turn out. I don't know. This may bode for that whole conversation about looking at another form of government,
right?
Because people say they want representative government. That's what this was from the inception of the creation of the town of Stoughton back in the 1620s.
Right.
But what we're having now is that we're not getting representative government. We have many of the precincts, particularly 7 and 8, the ones who are usually full are 4 and 5,
right.
And even there, we don't even have the contested. I think
town meeting rep.
Yeah,
right.
for town meeting rep, I think you could vote for 7 in precinct 4, which I'm in,
right.
And there were only 6 candidates.
And I mean, I've seen just a couple of years ago, I remember there were more than 20 candidates on the ballot for that precinct, with again the same 7, and you actually had to turn people away who were willing to serve in town meeting, as precincts 7 and 8 struggled to fill their slots. And you just see a complete shift this year where, I mean, some notable names too are not running for town meeting rep in precinct 4 and in other precincts too. So, and it's certainly something to.
Well, it's a conversation, Jeffrey, it's a conversation we're going to have. Mm-hmm. I think this isn't a new phenomenon. I mean, granted, it seems worse this year.
This is extreme this year.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well, some are going to say it may be the weather. Some are going to say that folks are just disenchanted with the whole town meeting process. Some people are going to say there's going to be a need for a change of government. Nonetheless, it demands that we pay attention to what's going on here, have the conversation, and decide what we as a town want as a type of government going forward. So, it opens up a conversation, and I hope that through the Board of Selectmen, because I believe that's where the committee comes out of, that will be looking at government and reform to the charter and things of that nature, that charter reform process can get underway.
And again, don't want to read too much into one particular precinct's results, especially where this turnout appears to be relatively low. We don't have the number of blanks included in these results yet, so I figure that there probably were a handful of blanks cast, but you're looking at just a little over 100 votes cast in this precinct. This is a precinct that I thought Dr. Ural would do fairly well in if he was going to, this could be a precinct he would carry. And Molly Cochran beats him by 24. Again, that's a margin that can be erased very easily. But I just thought that was a little interesting. Again, I would have thought Erdem would have done fairly well in this precinct.
Well, I think, last year was the first year that we did this particular, post-election program, and it was very exciting. In fact, we have with us a person who was successful during that. Current school committeeman Joe Comsores is here with us, and he was a part of that particular process. As we began to look at the numbers last year and see how things were panning out over the course of the night, it was difficult to be able to identify a particular precinct where, one might feel that would be the precinct that they're in, unless they lived in that precinct.
I feel that if there is one precinct I like to really look at as a bellwether precinct for this town, it's precinct 4.
Yes,
and
that's correct.
It's usually more politically active, and you look back at the last several elections, and the winner of precinct 4 usually wins the election. And I remember last year, that was the first precinct that came in, and we're sitting here and we're seeing that the incumbents, who should have done well in that precinct because it was their home precinct if they were to win, were not.
You're talking about last year?
Last year.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, that's exactly
what it was.
It was
really indicative of kind of the tide and the sign of things to come. So it'll be interesting this year whether that same anti-incumbency flavor continues or if it's a little bit of a mixture. One thing that's a little interesting from a campaign standpoint is you see signs all over town, and except for one candidate. And it doesn't seem to impact her in terms of the results, and that's Cynthia Walsh. She just has a couple of signs around town. That was the same case 3 years ago when she ran, and you have the other candidates have dozens all over town. So what do you think allows Ms. Walsh to be able to run a different style campaign and still have had success, you know, especially winning her past 2 elections?
Well, you know, just by observing, Cynthia Walsh is everywhere. She's at all the events. She participates in all the events. I can recall when I first moved to Stoughton, I used to notice when I would come up to Town Hall, in one of the first seats in front of any of the meetings, there was a woman that oftentimes had on a blue dress, and it was Cynthia Walsh. So she has been participatory. Plus the other thing, she's a native. I mean, she's been born here. She was a teacher here, so she's known. And part of politics is being able to be known. And so she has the distinct advantage. And I think this year I saw she had 2 ads in the penny saver. And I want to comment on that as well. At least from my observations looking at over the course of the electoral process here in Stoughton, this appeared to me to be the most instances of ads within the penny saver.
Yes, definitely.
You know, we had the ads within the penny saver, the signs, even though signs don't vote. I know last year, Selectmen Spanky had many signs out there, and I think we predicted that that was going to be a successful outcome
for him. But as we kind of, to bring it full circle, as we were just referencing with Selectman Walsh, signs don't vote. And
that's right.
And that's a great example of, she doesn't have the signs around town, and she has been successful in her previous campaigns.
And see, and so my point is a question of what can one do to strike that type of balance, to get their visibility, to get their points across, and to be able to do that. Now, as I looked at some of the campaigns, you know, if I gave my own political analysis on in terms of how I thought campaigns are done, and we may do that over the night and see how they fit with respect to what the results are. We talk about, yes, signs do not vote, but signs are oftentimes an indication in terms of the type of work that a candidate may be doing in order to get their name and their face and their positions out into the general public. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you have it's GOTV, get out to vote, is what's important. And the disappointing part, I think last year was 12 or 13%.
Let me just interrupt you as we have our next precinct coming in. This is precinct 3. This votes at the South Elementary School. This would cover, looking at the map, parts of Park Street and also parts of Turnpike Street towards the end where it meets Park Street, and also Sumner Street and some of 138, like the Sumner Ridge neighborhood. So just again to give you an idea of where this precinct votes. Precinct 3, the Selectman taking Precinct 3 is Peter Brown with 161 votes. That's Peter Brown with 161. This precinct is very close. They're all separated by just 10 votes. Bob O'Regan is next with 155. So again, Brown with 161, O'Regan with 155, Bob Cohn with 154, and Cynthia Walsh with 151. So we see an encouraging result for Peter Brown there, kind of making up the ground he lost in Precinct 7. But again, these results are all within 10 votes of each other. This is not close on the school committee side. Molly Cochran with 236 and Dr. Ural with 109. So again, Molly Cochran with 236 and Erdem Ural with 109. On the Selectmen side, Brown 161, O'Regan 155, Cohn 154, and Walsh 151.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I'm intrigued by how close those Selectmen totals were. That's unusual.
Well,
that's jumbled up.
Yeah, no. Well, you know, that is. I'm not sure what that's a sign of. I'm not sure if that's a sign that that the candidates, you know, were able to get their messages across to, and well, obviously they did get their messages across to a number of people. This has been most unusual. I have not seen in the past numbers to come before us in the election in that manner. Usually you have a fairly large delta between the candidates. And so this seems to be is going to be an exciting and potentially a very close finish.
Absolutely.
You know, amongst the you know, whoever is successful here, and we're seeing some dramatic changes in the sense of who's taking leads as well as we go into this race. Well, the school committee race.
That's,
you know,
I mean, that's a massive result for Miss Cochran, Attorney Cochran. I mean, she doubled up.
Well, she doubled, but also, you know, being a first-time candidate, first time running for the election, that's an interesting result, and I think I'd love to be able to see in terms of what the third, you know, precinct that we get will show us.
And let's see, do we have totals for the first two precincts? All right, so this is after precinct 3 and 7. These are the totals so far. On the school committee side, Molly Cochran with 341 and Erda Mural with 190. Again, Cochran with the 341 to 190 lead. On the selectmen side, we are neck and neck here. Leading the way so far is Cynthia Walsh with 255 votes, again 255. Bob Cohn with 242 votes. Bob O'Regan with 239 votes, and Peter Brown with 216. So first place is Walsh with 255, fourth place is Brown with 216. Just off the top of my head, that's 39 votes separating those two, as we have precinct 2 coming in. So precinct 2 votes at the Jones Elementary School. This encompasses much of Turnpike Street, from the Brockton line to the park, and then all the way actually down to basically Central Street, like the Chapman Road area, the Walnut Street area near the library, that's in precinct 2, Prospect Street, that just again to give you an idea of where we're talking about. So this is precinct 2. Precinct 2. In first place for selectmen is Bob O'Regan with 162 votes. So that's Bob O'Regan with 162 in precinct number 2. In second place in this precinct is Peter Brown with 120 votes. So O'Regan with a little bit of a margin there, 42 votes in precinct 2. Third place is Bob Cohn with 119 votes. And Cynthia Walsh with 116 votes. And that's our home precinct, by the way. Surprising to see, again, this is very close, but surprising to see Miss Walsh coming in fourth in her home precinct. School committee is another wide margin here, as Molly Cochran with 203 votes and Dr. Ural with 85. Again, Cochran takes precinct 2, 203 to 85. So we're going to allow Jordan to tally these numbers up and post them on social media. And again, we're seeing neck and neck still with the selectmen, but the school committee has opened up a little bit. You know, certainly we've only had 3 out of 8 precincts. We still have 5 more to get to you, but just looking at these numbers so far, with precinct 4 still to come, which I imagine Molly Cochran would do quite well in that precinct, those are very encouraging numbers for her.
Absolutely. I think just in terms of the margin, I also think, as you point out, with 4 and 5 not having those numbers as of yet, certainly these are impressive numbers. They would be encouraging if I was sitting in her camp with regard to that, and I would be concerned if I was sitting in Dr. Ural's camp.
And as we, let me interrupt as we get to precinct 6.
Okay.
So we have, so far we've given you
7, 3, 2, and 6.
2, and 6. 7, 3, 2, 6.
And 6 we're getting now.
All right, precinct 6 for selectmen. Bob Cohn takes precinct 6 with 152. Bob O'Regan takes second with 131. Walsh in third with 128. And Brown in fourth with 105. So let's go over those numbers again. Cone, 152. O'Regan, 131. Walsh, 128. And Brown, 105. These numbers are so close. We're going to have the tally for you in a moment. But on the school committee side, again, Attorney Cochran continues to widen her lead here. 180 votes to Erdem Ural's 103. So again, Attorney Cochran takes precinct number 6, 180 to 103. So we've given you about half the results so far. We've given you 7, 3, 2, and 6. Precinct 6, I've failed to mention, votes at the Hanson Elementary School. This encompasses the areas of Chemung Street, Central Street to the Canton line to about Island Street. And the neighborhoods that are off of Bay Road, at the very beginning of Bay Road where it meets Cobb's Corner, that's where Precinct 6 votes. It's a small precinct, but a heavily populated, densely populated one. And we see here that, we have one more precinct coming in. Precinct 4 has come in.
And before you give the numbers of Precinct 4, I was going to say that Precinct 4 is going to tell us quite a bit about what I think is going to be the final outcome in this election, almost for all of the races. So I'm putting I'm going to put a marker down in terms of Precinct 4 is going to be an indicator of the outcomes on the races, and if we find that the numbers still seem as wide in the school committee race, I think it'll be an opportunity to call that particular race.
Absolutely. Let's see. Precinct 4. Bob O'Regan takes Precinct 4 with 216 votes. In second place is Bob Cohn with 195 votes. Cynthia Walsh in third with 174 votes. And Peter Brown in fourth with 128 votes. Again, your selectmen totals. O'Regan, 216, Cohn, 195, Walsh, 174, and Brown, 128. On the school committee side, Molly Cochran, almost, I would say, 2.5 times the number of votes as Ural in this precinct. Molly Cochran with 311 votes, and Dr. Ural with 115. So this is Precinct 4 that we're talking about here. Again, very politically active precinct. This is not as densely populated as Precinct 6. This is probably the largest precinct in town. It covers the widest area of land. This votes at the Gibbons Elementary School. It covers part of Plain Street towards the Bay Road end. It covers all of West Street, or most of West Street for that matter. And so those are basically the two main areas, is West and Plain. So,
no, as I said,
I believe my fault, my microphone was off on that. So I'm going to actually give those Precinct 4 again. My apologies for you. Again, this is the perils of live television. So in case you couldn't hear me clearly at home the first time, I'm going to give you the results for Precinct 4 again. Again, that votes at the Gibbons School, covers most of West Street, and covers some of Plain Street. Bob O'Regan takes Precinct 4 with 216. Bob Cohn in second place with 195. Cynthia Walsh in third with 174. Peter Brown in fourth with 128. School Committee, Molly Cochran with 311, and Erdem Ural with 115.
Now, I said before we got the numbers for Precinct 4 that I'm prepared to be able to say that Precinct 4 is going to be the bellwether as far as the final outcome of the election. So I'm just going to put that marker down here as we start to tabulate the numbers. And if, in fact, I stand correct on that, then what we would have is a situation whereby it would be O'Regan and Cohn who would be the selectmen.
Yeah, so let's get to those. Before we continue our discussion, let's get to those results. We're through 5 precincts. We've given you 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7. We're still waiting on 1, 5, and 8. Through 5 precincts, here are the totals. the lead, this is a very tight race for selectmen, where Bob O'Regan is ahead with 748 votes, Bob Cohn with 708, Cynthia Walsh with 673, so she's only, let's see, 27, 35 votes off of Bob Cohn for second place, and Peter Brown with 569. On the school committee side, however, Molly Cochran has opened up a very comfortable lead here. It's 1,035 to 493, where she's doubling up.
And I'm prepared to call that race.
I think that's fair. I don't see five, based on the turnout we're seeing so far, I don't see 1, 5, and 8 delivering. I mean, the current school committee chairman, Dr. Ural, would have to take almost every vote in those 3 precincts.
That's
so
right.
I think that's fair to call that race.
Yeah. And again, maybe I'm going out on a limb, but the numbers in the totality speak almost identically to what I've just said. Precinct 4 being the bellwether for what would be the eventual outcome of the selectman race, and in this case, in Precinct 4, Regan had 216 and Cone had 195, and they're first and second in the total number. So,
yeah,
I'm saying that Precinct 4, as we said, is a very political precinct, and in years past, that has been the case, other than the exception, as I understand it, was last year when that didn't occur, and we know that there was some incumbent issues, that anti-incumbency issues that were prevalent last year, and some issues that particularly were affected with regards to some of the union negotiations in town. So that could have been an aberration, in the sense of the voting that took place. But if if history bears out what I've just said about Precinct 4 being the bellwether, we may find that to be the case this evening. So once again, we have provided you with the results on Precincts 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7.
So far, just if you're keeping score at home, Bob O'Regan has taken Precincts 2 and 4. Peter Brown is taking Precinct 3. Bob Cohn is taking Precinct 6. And Cynthia Walsh has taken Precinct number 7. So again, just to show you how close this race is, that all 4 candidates have come out first in a given precinct.
And in the school committee?
The school committee has been across the board with Molly Cochran
taking all of the precincts.
To go to the school committee, the selectmen ran a very, I would say, it wasn't a fired up campaign. Everybody was very respectful. Everybody was very, kind of toned down a little bit. They just had discussions. The school committee, on the other hand, that was a real brawl. The 2 candidates really went at it in the debates, and the ads and the penny saver even seemed to be going back and forth with each other, and saying that so-and-so didn't do this, so-and-so didn't do that, or so-and-so did do this.
Well, that's how you run a campaign.
Absolutely, but it just seems to me, obviously, Attorney Cochran's campaign has come out more successful tonight. Did the chairman at any point maybe overplay his cards with any of the various actions, the penny saver ad in particular about the Gibbons School roof, the way he became chairman even on last April 16th in this very room, that was controversial. There's a lot of different things that people who have not been in his camp have been pointing to. Did he overplay his cards?
Well, I wouldn't say he overplayed his cards. I think as you stated, the controversy started well before this campaign began for this election. When you're an incumbent, you run on your record. You have a record out there for people to look at and to be able to distinguish what you have or have not done. So the reality is, I think that's what, in this case, Attorney Molly Cochran did, was to point out the types of issues which he felt made the school committee not to be effective and particularly some of the things that were done by Dr. Ural. So to me, it was a matter of being able to point those issues out, and certainly there were some things that that were pointed out in the ads and otherwise by Dr. Ural, which I think have come back in order to help hurt him. I think to a large extent, there was some reliance upon what transpired last year, which was around the whole question of some of the union issues and in the schools that really brought to power some of what Dr. Ural stood for. So I think that is evident here that apparently whatever campaign strategy that Attorney Molly Cochran employed, it seems to me has brought her success, that she will be the person who will be sitting on the school committee this coming year.
As we still wait for 3 precincts to come in, but so far, again, we do have an overwhelming lead in the school committee race. Selectmen way too close to call. Just the margin with the totals. Again, we have Bob O'Regan at 748, Bob Cohn at 708, Cynthia Walsh at 673, and Peter Brown at 569. Again, the top 2 win in that race. So we only have a 35 vote margin between Bob Cohn in second place and Cynthia Walsh in third, with 3 precincts left. So this is anybody's contest at this point. And let's talk about some of the issues that the selectmen face with after this election. One of them will definitely be the downtown. That's a very popular topic in the debates, and they all had very different answers.
Yes.
So as you've served as interim town manager, you know how the day-to-day functions in this building work. What can the Board of Selectmen do to facilitate revitalization downtown? Because Stoughton doesn't own many of the properties that are there.
Well, I think that what people are looking for is leadership. I think, no, the selectmen cannot solve separately, the body or the individuals who make up that body can solve what's going on in the downtown. There has to be a way in terms of establishing collaborations, partnerships. One of the things I think clearly that there needs to be is an outreach to the chamber, in order to have the chamber, which you are the president of, to play a part, because I think we need more in terms of the public-private partnerships in order to move that forward. I think the chamber can play a significant role in that, being that they can galvanize and organize the business community to provide some leadership coming there. I come out of the Boston scene with regards to public-private partnerships, seeing how the chamber is operated. I think that what they're going to be looking for is for the selectmen to come up with some creative ideas, both in terms of tax credits, to look at it, the proper type of zoning that can take place, traffic studies, all of these things are going to be, and then I think that even establishing a downtown district so that you can also speak to the types of businesses that will be in downtown, that can all be done by looking at it from a planning standpoint. And I have to give kudos to the economic development, Patricia, not Patricia.
The Economic Development Coordinator?
Yes, coordinator.
Oh, Pam McCarthy.
Pam McCarthy. Sorry about that, Pam.
Just Precinct 5 came in, so we just have to wrap up.
We'll wrap up and get Precinct 5, but I think that the role that she's playing right now will be helpful in moving that forward.
Absolutely. So Precinct 5, let's start with the school committee, so we'll keep you waiting for the selectmen. Draw out the suspense. The school committee in Precinct 5, Molly Cochran with 162, and Dr. Ural with 98. So again, Cochran 162, Ural 98. So Cochran further extends her lead in the school committee race. Now over to the selectmen in Precinct 5. In taking this precinct is Bob Cohn with 166. Cynthia Walsh coming in second at 118. Bob O'Regan just 7 votes behind at 111. And Peter Brown at 74. So again, Precinct 5.
Which is Bob Cohn's precinct.
Which is Bob Cohn's precinct. That's good, good to point out. And that also votes at the Gibbons Elementary School, and that encompasses Plain Street, closer Washington, Washington from Plain to about the downtown, and parts of School Street as well. So precinct number 5 is Cone, 166, Walsh, 118, O'Regan, 111, and Brown, 74. So we'll get you the totals in a moment, as where we are with the Selectmen's race through 6 precincts now. We're still waiting on Precinct 1 and Precinct 8. While we're waiting for some of the results to come in, I noticed our town moderator, who's running unopposed this evening, Howard Hanson, is in the audience. Can we invite you up just to talk a little bit about town meeting? Well, we might just have to interrupt and to give you the results. You could sit right beside Mr. Feaster. So just bear with us one moment. Everybody, thank you again for tuning in. We appreciate the audience here as we bring you the live election results. And if you don't mind just clipping on one of the microphones.
Let's see, I always get this backwards and walk off with it. How's it coming through?
You're fine.
So thank you, Mr. Hanson, for joining us. Again, this is Howard Hanson. He's running unopposed for town moderator, overseeing the town meeting. And looking at precincts 1 through 8, none of the precincts have contested town meeting races. You're going to be looking for a lot of fill-ins. Talk to us about this process, and if you're watching at home, maybe the snow kept you from being able to pull papers, you didn't get enough write-in votes today. How can an interested party who wants to take part in town meeting be involved in the process?
Next week, very important, we are having, I'm not going to call them a runoff caucuses, for every precinct except 4, and maybe, I understand, 3 may have filled all the seats one way or another. Biggest part of the problem is we were snowed in. Several people took out papers, and there were times when the town hall was shut, and the deadline came in the middle of another snowstorm. So next week, we'll accumulate the data. Usually the people who write in who have between 3 and 11 votes are put on a list. You have to have a minimum of 12 write-in votes. That's important. In particular, Precinct 8 is almost out of business. That's unfortunate, but we had some very serious complications, and it started going downhill in 2000.
Not to interrupt, but we're looking for 19 representatives in that precinct, and only 2, Peter Ventresco and Stephen Mitchell, who are longtime town meeting reps, are running in that.
Shoo-ins, I guess.
Right,
would be.
well, yes. So just again, to give you a little bit of numbers to back that up.
We did have a few people who were willing to write in. They signed the notice of intent to run, which is like an acceptance when they, and unfortunately somebody got the wrong information about how to do stickers, or didn't check out their stickers, and that did not help.
Mr. Moderator, hasn't this been a trend over the past number of years?
Well, I apologize for interrupting. Let me just give you, as you're watching at home, before we get to this next question, let me just get you the updated Selectmen totals, as that race is really neck and neck. We've actually had a flip-flop in first and second place. After 6 precincts have been counted, and those are, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, so we're waiting on 1 and 8. So again, through 6 precincts, we have Bob Cohn in first with 874, Bob O'Regan in second with 859, Cynthia Walsh in third with 791, and Peter Brown in fourth was 643. So the difference between first and second is a mere 15 votes with Cone over O'Regan, and O'Regan is edging Walsh for second place by just 68 votes. So very close here as we head into the final two precincts, 1 and 8. If you're in the Cynthia Walsh camp, I think you would have been a little bit more comfortable if Precinct 2 was still one of those precincts waiting to come in. However, I was surprised by her showing in Precinct 2 tonight, as she finished 4th in that precinct. That is her home precinct after all. We're still waiting on Precincts 1 and 8, and the Selectman race is too close to call. On the school committee side, Molly Cochran with 1197 and Dr. Erda Murrell with 591. So I apologize for interrupting, Joseph, but back to your...
I will come back to the question to the moderator, but I think it's interesting. I just want to underscore a comment you made here. One of the things we also found in the past, two things. One is the comment that I made about Precinct 4 being a bellwether.
Right.
And two, a person's, how they fare in their own home precinct have also been bellwethers for outcomes in the elections also. So as we pointed out here, Walsh was not successful in her precinct, Precinct 2. Cone was successful in Precinct 5. O'Regan is not in Precinct 4. I think O'Regan is in
Precinct 1.
Precinct 1. So
Which we're still waiting for that.
We're still waiting for that.
Peter Brown would be Precinct 2. He came in second in Precinct 2.
He came in second in Precinct 2. So, so again, we're starting to see that home precinct and again, Precinct 4 are bellwethers.
Again, just to see numbers-wise before we get back to Mr. Hanson, just looking right now at the pure numbers, Peter Brown is running close. It's definitely, it's 643. It's not insurmountable, but he is about 200 plus votes behind second place right now, with only 2 precincts left to go. So Mr. Brown would need a huge showing in those 2 precincts. So I think we're kind of seeing the Selectmen's race at this point shrink down to 3, where it's Bob Cone, Bob O'Regan, and Cynthia Walsh vying for those 2 spots at this time. Again, just using the numbers at this point.
And I just would want to say, Jeffrey, I think you're absolutely correct in that. But I would also say that in terms of Peter Brown shouldn't be disappointed from the standpoint of first-time candidate. First-time candidate, has served on the Finance Committee, town meeting member for a long period of time. But there's a different thing when you're in an elective office or running for an elective office, even though town meeting is an elective office as well. But when you're running for elective office, it is somewhat differently. So I think that if this is something that he's interested in doing, then his showing, and even with the looking at it in terms of past years, we saw distinct patterns last year in the races. I mean,
absolutely.
The margins were wide. In both races last year.
This year, the school committee race is wide, but in the Selectmen, I mean, we haven't seen a Selectmen's race this close in quite some time. You have to go back to in 2014, the Selectmen, it was Spanky Souza and Joe McCrisky won easily. In 2013, TJ Recupero was unopposed. 2012, Cynthia Walsh and Bob O'Regan won pretty comfortably over their challenge, the 2 challengers. 2011, John Inzavino and Stephen Astos ran unopposed. I mean, so it's been quite some time since we've seen a race this close.
Well, this is as I've described, this campaign season was quite spirited.
Yes.
I saw it both in terms of penny savvy ads, all of the campaigns, whether it's the definitive debate or not. We had several different debates in town, which the conversations that you had with the candidates, Jeffrey. So I think that the attention was focused on that, and what we said earlier. I would also go to say the number of signs that were in the neighborhoods was the most I've seen in all these years. Absolutely. So
Well,
I think the
let's,
campaigns did that, but I want to come back to the,
we
come back to
apologize
the.
for keeping,
That's fine.
Yeah, well, we want to come back to you because in terms of you beat out all your candidates, Mr. Moderator, so therefore we
well,
can,
we haven't
we can chat
checked
with your
blanks
vet.
yet, no.
Yeah. But the question that I was asking you is that, have you noticed that would you agree that there has been a downward trend in the sense of persons seeking to participate in the town meeting representative? I know that you have instituted a number of things, and I've seen your raise hands ads that you've had at different places and at different times. You now talk about a process where people can, I guess within the precincts, is that the process that will happen next week? Within the precincts, trying to select individuals who have indicated their interest in order to serve. So does this say that we may need to begin to take a look at the type of government that we have here, charter change and for the type of government here in Stoughton? What's your thoughts?
Well, a couple of things that my first inclination on this, because the trend started going down about 10 years ago, and this is the second redistricting censure period, and the demographics in the most recent change, firms from outside of the state put it all on a computer, and a second part of the redistricting process is a review from a local committee. Our town clerk, prior town clerk, chose not to use that process. That's very disappointing because the local review picks up situations like Rose Forte has 150 residents, and they were one.
Just for the viewers at home, where is that located?
It's on Pleasant Street, and right now, for many years, it was in Precinct 2. And all they had to do was walk one block around the corner to the polling place. Now they have to take a bus almost a mile down to the middle school. That's a lot for elderly
Right.
people.
And that's precinct, the middle school is precinct number 8. Right.
Yeah. And then they tried to make a shift between 7 and 8, and some people are very resistant to that because it's kind of foolish because they were right across the street from their polling place. They had to go around the corner. But there's a big significant difference in one, that makeup. Two, we have lost some population. And other towns, many towns in this situation with a representative town meeting have institutional situations. And I'm going to give some examples. Amherst has 8 precincts. One precinct is almost all the UMass campus. Most of that, they have a population, but most of them are they appear in roll books. There might be faculty, administrators, people who work for the college but don't live there. So there was a move several years ago to allow in local elections people who live on campus. That wasn't well received, but it was probably the numbers showed where people were. Some towns have both a college and penal institutions.
Right.
Those people, they're counted in the number.
Now,
we have aliens.
Now, just from I guess, an informational perspective, there's 168 possible town meeting representatives. Not going to get there this year. That's a bold. Might be a bold prediction, but we'll probably won't get to 168.
I would be delighted if it was.
Right. What is the quorum based on? Is the quorum based on 168, or is the quorum based on how many total representatives there are at the start of town meeting?
How many real warm bodies
So
there are.
if there's 120 at the start of town meeting, you need 61 to start the town meeting.
Right.
So let's see. We have precinct 1 coming in. So Precinct 1, we'll be right back with Mr. Hanson, but I want to give these results here. Precinct 1 votes at the Daw Elementary School. It encompasses the north part of town that borders Avon, Canton, and Randolph, 139 area. We're talking Pleasant Street, Page Street, Turnpike Street, the north section. We have one precinct left to give you after this. That would be Precinct 8, but for now, Precinct 1 results. We have, taking Precinct 1, in his home precinct, Bob O'Regan with 164. Cynthia Walsh with 119. Peter Brown with 114. And Bob Cohn with 106. Again, Bob O'Regan, 164. Cynthia Walsh, 119. Peter Brown, 114. And Bob Cohn, 106. The school committee, Molly Cochran, 184. Erda Mural, 98. Again, Cochran, 184. Ural, 98. So we're going to get you the updated results in a moment through 7 precincts here as the Selectmen's race. We'll get you the official numbers, but Bob O'Regan has retaken the lead overall in the Selectmen's race. We'll get you an update on between 2nd and 3rd place as Bob Cohn and Cynthia Walsh are vying for those 2 positions. So,
Right now, my precinct 4 prediction is
as has been the case for,
Yeah.
you know, it's a precinct that it's a good one to look at. It's kind of why I'm glad it didn't come in first. Last year it came in first last year, and when I saw the results, I said, "Oh, is anybody going to be left tuning in?" So as we reach the almost 9:30, it's 9:23 right now, Apple time. We have one precinct left to give. And stay tuned for that, and we'll give you, of course, the total end results. And if any of the candidates happen to stop by, we will bring you interviews with them as well. But in the meantime, we do have the town moderator here, Mr. Howard Hanson. And again, just briefly remind viewers who might have just tuned in, what can they do to become a town meeting rep, as we're going to be looking for many town meeting reps. There was an article in the Globe South this past weekend documenting just how many, and it's quite, off the top of your head, do you know how, it's quite a few. It's about 70?
I think it was 79 was the number. It was a number that was being sought.
Well, I calculated at the beginning of the
cycle.
Before the snowstorm.
Right.
We needed approximately 86 people.
Right. So if you're watching now, you didn't get written in, but there's still spots left. How can you become a town meeting rep?
So while it's normally considered a runoff where we take the people who didn't quite get the 12 votes, we put them on the list, that's a convenient way to get at least a number of people who can come down. The balance of the precinct members, you're still an incumbent until you are officially replaced. And really, we don't change until the organizational town meeting, which is the 3rd, the Thursday before the annual town meeting. But we must complete the membership not less than 2 weeks before town meeting convenes, because information has to be out in proper time. So we're working on a very tight schedule, and really there is no cushion. So the times that the town hall was closed, traffic, I mean, a month of snow really did us in. And some news on the other end, it was in 2012, when Hurricane Sandy was coming, the Mass Moderators Association was having their annual meeting, and there were about 4 or 5 towns on the Cape that knew that their fall town meeting was going to be hit by a storm. And there is no, up until then, there was no one ever gave it a thought of how to react in an emergency status, and town meetings would have to be convened by at least having 4 people come together, and even if the trees are falling down, and call and postpone a meeting. Fortunately, probably this is one of the few times I'm going to give a compliment to our Moderators Association. They actually took, when you have a room full of neutral people, they always have neutral results with neutral things so that nothing gets accomplished. However, they did, about 8 of us moderators, some representatives, some open town meeting, we did this all by email, and bill number Senate 2121 was signed just at the first of the year, which allows the moderator to get to even do all of this transaction between the selectmen and the town clerk, and possibly the facilities that the selectmen may need to get.
Let me, I apologize, let me interrupt there as we, let me give
final precinct.
let me give an update, and then we'll get to the final precinct. So
Hold that thought, Mr. Moderator.
Good.
the update, all right, so this is through 7 precincts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Still waiting on 8, but those results have just come in. Through 7 precincts, Bob O'Regan in the Selectmen's race leads with 1,023 votes. 43 more than Bob Cohn, who's in second, and 980. Cynthia Walsh is 70 behind with 910. And Peter Brown with 757. So coming into this last precinct, it's really a 3-man race for 2 seats right now. Let's get down to the results here. We'll start off with the school committee. And in the school committee in precinct number 8, Dr. Erda Murrell takes this precinct 88-80 over Molly Cochran. Molly Cochran ultimately wins this race handily, but Erdem Murrell does take this precinct 88-80. Now to the selectmen's race. Taking this precinct and closing the gap is Cynthia Walsh with 103. Bob O'Regan in second with 77. Peter Brown in third with 66. And Bob Cohn in fourth with 54. This is what Cynthia Walsh needed to overtake. This is the recipe. Let's see if it's enough mathematically. I think she's going to be a little bit short, but we're just adding up those numbers right now. But Walsh needed to win this precinct and have Cohn come in last to overtake the 70 votes. I think she's short though, so just hold on one second. Again, precinct 8, we have Walsh 103, O'Regan 77, Brown 66, Cohn 54. And again, on the school committee side, Ural 88, Cochran 80. Let's see if we have, we're going to get the numbers from downstairs as well in a moment. Thank you again to Christine Iacobucci, who's been downstairs getting this for us, and Jordan L. Carey, who's off camera to my right, who's been tabulating this. We're going to give you the totals in a moment on the selectmen's side and see Bob O'Regan, based on these numbers, has won.
Yes.
We're going to wait on the second place at this point. It's very close.
Yes.
All right, so looking at these numbers, on the selectmen side, again, these are unofficial. We're waiting downstairs, which we will deliver in a few moments, but from our unofficial tally here, Bob O'Regan, 1,100 votes. He comes in first and retains his seat on the Board of Selectmen, who will be reelected to another 3-year term. He's currently just finished his first 3-year term. And in second place is Bob Cohn with 1,034 votes. Bob Cohn has been a long-time town meeting member, and he's also on some of the other standing committees for
He's chaired municipal regulations.
Correct.
And then Cynthia Walsh, 21 votes is all that has separated, by our count, second and third place. And Cynthia Walsh is edged for third place. She comes in with 1,013 votes. Miss Walsh has been selectman non-consecutively for 9 years, 3 different terms, and she's just finishing off 6 years, 2 straight terms here from '09 to 2015. And Peter Brown with 823 votes, coming in 4th. So again, Bob O'Regan and Bob Cohn are the winners tonight in the selectmen's race. As we're waiting for the official counts from downstairs, but by our unofficial totals, it was an extremely close race throughout the evening. And hold on one moment. On the school committee side, again unofficially, Molly Cochran with 1,461, and Erdem Ural with 777.
That's his lucky number.
So,
Our unlucky number.
As long as it's not 666. But while Jeffrey's getting those counts, I know it, what do you think we can do, or that you would want to institute to try to get us back to the number of 168, Mr. Moderator?
Well, first of all, I don't think we should try to go back to 168. When we went from 6 to 8 precincts, that was in 1978. It was a comfortable margin, but we created a weak precinct. We could, and my suggestion is, and I'm seriously going to pursue this, is with the selectmen, go to the state legislature and the Secretary of State requesting that we redistrict the town down to 7 precincts. This has to be done through a legislative act, because it's really not so much the form of government that we have, and it is those who form the government. Some people will say town meeting takes too long, but I have to point out that this is a bigger town. We have more serious issues, and we shouldn't be going down to rubber stamp things, but there are things that we can do to make it more efficient, but efficiency is not always democracy.
Well, I want to say thank you to you for that.
Thank you so much for joining us as well. We appreciate
and I hope that we can get the process in a way where you feel it'll work for all of us. So congratulations on your
By the way, what is the percentage I got?
Let's see if we have the totals. Hold on 1 second. Totals. We don't have that number. I am going to ask for that.
We're going to go on and probably speak to some of the other candidates, but I want to thank you. And when we get that number, we'll definitely post. What were your numbers for the moderator's race?
Yeah. Race?
All right. So thank you again, Mr. Hanson, for joining us. Let's get to the final results again from downstairs. We have Bob O'Regan taking the selectmen's race with 1,100 votes even. Bob Cohn coming in second with 1,034. Cynthia Walsh coming in third with 1,013 votes. Peter Brown with 823. On the school committee side, Molly Cochran, 1,461. Beating Erdem Ural, the incumbent, who is coming off his second non-consecutive term. He finished with 777. The turnout rate tonight was 12.8%, which is much lower than it has been the last few years. You'd have to go back to, off the top of my head, 2011 for the next lowest. That was about 9% turnout. The other years in between have been between 15, 16%, and a spike of 20% a couple of years ago. So just let me, before we start interviewing Joseph, give me your take on these results.
Well, I think that, well, first and foremost, I think that this was a very spirited campaign, as I pointed out, both by the signage, both by the different debates and community forums that we did have, or candidate forums that were held, and as well with the amount of signs and articles in the Penny Saver. I think all of that brought out the best of the type of campaigning. I am intrigued by the outcome, but I think that what we said earlier on, two criteria which have become, or two bellwethers that have become apparent. One is that Precinct 4 oftentimes is the bellwether as to what will be the outcome in an election. In past years, when candidates didn't do well in Precinct 4, they were unsuccessful. This year, and I think possibly around when we had maybe about 4 precincts in, Jeffrey, I said when we got Precinct 4 results, it would be the bellwether for the campaign, and that is the case. In the case of O'Regan was 216 votes, Cone was 195,
and that's how it turned out.
And that's how it turned out in the race.
Even further, the difference between Cone and Walsh in that precinct was 27 votes.
That's right.
And the difference between second and third in the race
was about 24.
It was right about that 24.
That's
so
right. So
we're talking here roughly the same margin in Precinct 4 is what we've kind of seen play out.
When I've done elections in Boston, there are persons who do the type of analysis of election precincts to determine outcomes in races. And oftentimes what they will do is just what we were discussing here. They will look at a particular precinct, in Boston, or a certain number of precincts, and if a candidate is successful in those, I would say 95% of the time, that is what is the end result in a campaign. So I think we're starting to see that occur here as well. One other indicator that we pointed out as well, also, is that when a person is not successful in their home precinct, they are not successful.
It's tough to get, and you know that goes true.
That so goes those two
in
indicators.
Presidential politics, even. I mean,
that's right.
That's top to bottom.
But it shows that it also applies in local races. Now, has this been something that we've examined over past elections? I know I have not. So I'm using this this election and last year's election as some indicator of that. So these are points that we can look at when we do this next year.
Absolutely.
To be able to say if those two criteria, one, what happens in Precinct 4, two, what happens to a candidate in their home precinct. Now, one quick question. In the school committee race,
yes,
Dr. Euro won only one precinct. What is his home precinct?
His home precinct is, it's either 7 or 8.
Okay.
You know, I don't want to say the address on television.
See, well,
7?
Well, okay.
Okay.
Okay, so, well, in terms of Precinct 8, which is, as the moderator talked about, right, there's the close proximity of 7 and 8. In Precinct 7,
well,
Dr.
those
Euro...
were his best showings, 7 and 8.
Yes.
Yeah.
81, he got 109 in Precinct 3, but in terms of Precinct 7, he got 81 into margin, and in terms of 88. So we'll be able to have some of these, when we do what they say, election analysis, we'll be able to look at these things and do some comparisons and maybe bring that forward in future elections. And these are things that may be helpful to candidates.
So
but we have some candidates here.
We do have some candidates here, and I'd like to start bringing up. I'll bring up Mr. Cohn, who has won a seat on the Board of Selectmen. So, Mr. Cohn, come on up. Come around. It looks better than mine.
Well, you got the lovely bride here, so that's right.
They were all wet. A long day out there.
Well,
you can verify that.
That's right. I saw you early this morning.
First of all, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Again.
Thank you so much.
This is Robert Cohn. He came in second tonight in the Selectmen's race, winning one of the 2 seats available on the Board of Selectmen. And we'll just start off with your reactions to winning and what you would like to do next.
First of all, I want to thank the people of Stoughton for voting me in. Very, very important.
Yes.
Is it on, Jim?
Yes.
Am I up all right?
Yep.
Here you go.
I want to thank the people of Stoughton for voting me in. It's been a long, long 5 weeks. From the square, snow every week, to rain today. He can verify this because he saw me. I was there at 7 o'clock, 6:45 this morning at the Gibbons School working through rain and everything. And my wife was touring around with people. Second of all, I'd like to thank David Souza. David Souza was a mentor to me, and he did a great, great job. Those signs didn't get put up by themselves. It was Souza and Cohn that put them all up. Another thing is Maria Souza. She did such a fantastic job for me. She was my right-hand man, would write the ads, and she'd take them and put them all in the right places, and also translated them in Portuguese, was very important to me. So she was watching, making sure everything was right.
Now, we don't get the exit polling, but you were the only candidate, I believe, that ran ads bilingually.
That's correct. I was the only
Do you
candidate.
feel I mean, certainly you won, but do you feel that was an important factor in your winning?
It was an important factor to me, most important. I don't know what it had effect on anybody, but to me, it was thought my moral obligation. We have a large Portuguese population, and it was my obligation to do it. It wasn't Maria. Maria just transposed and set everything up for me. And she, as I say, she was there today. She took days off to help me. She did a fantastic job. Whenever things were down, she'd boost me up. Diane would boost me up. And believe me, there's been up and downs this whole, as you go along, you get tireder and tireder. And you saw me this morning. I was pretty beat this morning.
Well, let me ask you this. First and foremost, congratulations.
Thank you
It
so
has
much.
been, I've used the term, a spirited campaign. And I think that this was the most ads and penny saver that I've seen in any electoral season. Now that you have been successful, and I know you want to get some rest and get underway, but
How about the beach?
yeah,
I'm trying.
yeah.
Well,
But,
I just
yeah.
came from there.
I'm trying.
South Florida right
Yeah,
now
he
is
was-
it's perfect.
Thank you.
But just some thoughts. You have served in town government for over 39 years as a town meeting representative.
37.
37 years. You have served on the municipal municipal regulations as chairman for a number of years. You served on the finance committee in the past. Now that you're now at a selectman, and I know you were quite strident on the types of things that you would want to undertake, any thoughts that you want to say to us and say to the viewing audience as to what things are, if your priorities now coming on select?
I'd rather talk to the selectmen first.
Okay.
That's most important. Yes, we talk as we, it should be we as a unit, not me, but we. And if I do anything there, we're going to all work together. I don't think they worked together before, but that's the way I work. That's the most successful way to do things, when you do it as we instead of me. As far as anything else goes, I'd like to talk to the selectmen before I talk to the people.
Good answer.
Because you taught me that, Joe.
I was going to blame it on
No,
your
but
wife.
seriously, that's the way it should
Yeah.
be. This is what I want to do. I want to meet with the selectmen when we come in there. Believe me, there's not going to be radical changes, but I got a lot of questions to answer, and I want them answered. Period. That's all I would say. There's questions, I always said, and the government's going to be held accountable. And that's going to happen too. That's all I heard over this town by the people of Stoughton was, we're spending too much money and the pay raises are ridiculous. And that's what they want, that's what I'm going to bring forward. That's what I heard. And believe me, I covered this town from north, west, east. I put them in snowbanks, the signs. I took them out of the snowbanks. I put them in the earth. I was a mud man one day because my feet, God, it was everything. But we did it. And the day before Easter, the wind howling out there, the sun finally come out. But the last 2 Sundays, Saturdays, it was snow, cold. And I want to thank the people that helped me. They did a great job. I had good supporters with me. I didn't have a large force, believe me. This was done by 4 people. That's all it was done. Friends were there. They were supporters. That was the most important thing.
Do you have any final words before?
No, I just want to thank the people. thank Cynthia. I want to say our debates were great. They were civilized. We talked different things. It was up to the people of Stoughton to make their mind up. And when I ran this campaign, when I first took out my papers, my wife had no idea what I did for a day or so, and I broke her the news that I'm running for selectman. And she says, "What?" But as we went on, and she's been with me, if you noticed, everywhere I've been, she's been. And she's, for 42 years, it's coming up to 40, is it 42, 44?
You said 42 throughout the...
40, it'll be 45 years in September. She's been beside
God
me.
bless her.
Yeah.
And when I say we, it's beside the selectmen, it's we, Diane and Bob. And my son just called from Florida tonight to see how I made out.
Well, you can tell them that you were successful.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you so
Good
much.
luck.
Thank
And I'm
you.
looking forward to your tenure as selectman.
Congratulations. So before, we had a interest in the amount of votes from the moderator. He was running unopposed. I think this won't be your first time topping the ticket, but Howard Hanson comes in with 1,534 votes. That's about, let's see, that's about 100 more than Molly Cochran, 80 more than Molly Cochran or so on the, they're not the same race, but just for bragging rights, Howard Hanson did carry the ticket again. So you get the
Congratulations.
satisfaction of winning as your prize. Let's just before we go to our next interview, let's just bring up the results page again, just to catch you up in case you're just tuning in at home as we hit about 9:50 at night. The results for the school committee race was Molly Cochran, first-time candidate, 1,461, defeating incumbent Erdem Ural. He had 777 votes. So again, Cochran, 1,461, Ural, 777. On the selectmen's side, it was a close race throughout the evening, and it remained close until the very last precinct. Bob O'Regan came in first with 1,100. Bob Cohn, second with 1,034, both of them winning seats on the selectmen. Cynthia Walsh, 1,013, and Peter Brown, 823. So again, Walsh and Cohn winning selectmen seats. I'm sorry. O'Regan and Cohn, correction, O'Regan and Cohn. It's been a long night for us too. O'Regan and Cohn winning selectmen seats, and Cochran winning the school committee race. O'Regan, Cohn, and Cochran, the winners this evening. We have let's see, candidates, and we do have Miss Walsh in the audience, and she said that she would come on the program, so I'd like to invite Miss Walsh onto the program. We are reaching out to Attorney Cochran and Attorney O'Regan, Selectman O'Regan, to have them come on the program if they can make it here in time. So in the meantime, though, we are joined by Cynthia Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us.
I said I'd be here win or lose.
So just a statement, if you don't, start off the interview, a statement to the Stoughton public, voters at home, the viewers at home.
Well, I congratulate the winners. I'm especially fond of the voters in precincts 7 and 8, where they allowed me to top the ticket in those precincts. I want to thank everyone who voted, for anyone. The turnout is so sad. 87% of the people couldn't find a single thing worth coming out for. And it really didn't start raining till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And the most important people on the ballot really are the town meeting representatives. They're the ones that are going to decide in May and June how $100 million gets spent. And we didn't have many candidates there, except I do have still retain my seat in town meeting. So with this loss, I will lose my seat on the Board of Selectmen as of Thursday at 8 p.m. And that means I'll no longer be on the water subcommittee, but I'll still be on the other 9 committees that I serve on. So maybe an afternoon or something will free up. And no more parades and processions, so I guess I'm gonna get really flabby without those 10 jaunts that we have once a year in Stoughton. But I did want to make it clear, I lost by 21 votes. This was not a landslide.
No, it was close. As we mentioned, it was close throughout the evening. Just from a candidate's perspective, what's it like watching those numbers come in and seeing the results just kind of tip and go back and forth?
As Mr. Feaster said, when I didn't top the ticket in my home precinct, and then I live across the street from precinct 3, the line runs right down, cuts my neighborhood in half, I didn't top the ticket there either. In fact, I think I came in 3rd in both precincts.
No,
So, I mean, if your neighbors don't like you, you're in real trouble.
Is there anything, looking at what did transpire in terms of results, and again, as you point out, this was not a landslide by any shaken imagination. The numbers between 1st and 3rd wasn't great. Is there anything that you might have done differently in terms of the campaign?
I mean, I had 6 signs. Probably should have done a few more of those. I spent $308. Probably should have put, I guess I thought I was coasting on my reputation. I'm on TV just about every week. I'm out and about. And I guess the more you see me and the more you come in contact with me, the less you like.
Well, you know, one of the things, in fact, Jeffrey and I were doing commentary earlier, and we were talking about you as a candidate, and that's what I opined. I said that one of the things, the fact that, that you didn't have the ads and didn't do the signage was because of your visibility. You're at everything and have been at everything. And I remarked about when I first moved into town, at that seat that's right there, be the person who at the time had on a blue dress. I didn't even know who you were, but you were at all of the meetings at that time. So I think that, you could have some reliance upon the fact that you're at all the parades, you're at all the meetings, you served as a select woman. So all of these things certainly rely upon. This is a different type of election that took place, and maybe it's a matter of looking forward. What does the future hold for you? Would you think about running for this position in the future?
Well, I may. I mean, I've come back. I don't know how many comebacks one person's entitled to. I mean, I was a selectman in 1980. Mm-hmm. Then I came back in 2009 and served 2 terms. And it may be that people feel that I've already served 3 terms. Give someone else a chance. Mm-hmm. I am disappointed in the town's 289 years of existence. There's only been 7 female selectmen. To me, that's not a good thing. I think that I brought a different perspective to the board as far as financial issues went. As a single woman who owns her own home on a pension, I think I have an idea of how hard it is for some people to stay in Stoughton. If I ever thought of leaving Stoughton, it was this winter. Because life on the farm wasn't idyllic. But I have it a lot better than other people. I have my family live in Stoughton. 3 of my siblings live in Stoughton. My nephew Joey made sure that Aunt Cynthia could get to her medical appointments and to her meetings. My brother John's been a great help. They put out whatever signs were out. And my sister-in-law Priscilla held a sign in the square, and as the winning candidate said, when I got home, I was soaked to the skin and my scarf had literally frozen. This was probably the worst time that I can remember, and I have campaigned before and lost. Even when we had primaries, it wasn't this cold. Can you imagine this year if we'd had a primary in March? Mm-hmm. People standing out on snowbanks in February. So everyone who ran for office this year suffered physically. Last weekend, Molly Cochran almost blew over a couple of times. I told her to hang on to a lamppost. There's one good thing about being a little on the plus size is I wasn't blowing over in the wind. I may have been getting wet, but there were some people holding signs that I was concerned for their physical safety. But no, I did have ads. That's where the 308
Right.
dollars went. It'll be interesting when the campaign reports come in. I always like to do the math and figure out how much each vote cost.
All right.
I mean, because sometimes people spend $3 a vote.
Sure.
And so that'll be interesting. It looks like I spent $33 cents a vote.
Well,
Ever the math teacher, I can't help myself.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much for joining us, and I know that you won't be going far. I know that you'll be in your familiar seat at the meetings. So
Yeah, well, if you'll notice, my seat isn't there anymore.
we'll have to put.
But that's not going to defeat me. I'll just move one row behind.
Well, thank you very much. And,
Thank you for
know,
entertaining the loser.
Oh, nobody's a loser when you try to run for an office and serve your town. And thank you again, Ms. Walsh, for joining us this evening. I'd like to reset, and then we can get into a little bit of analysis as we start to wind down. Again, we have messages sent out to two of the other candidates who won this evening, Bob O'Regan and Molly Cochran. We're hoping to be able to get them on the air before we wrap up tonight, but we'll kind of play that by ear. Let's reset by giving you the results again. So if we can bring up the graphic with the results, we'll start with the school committee race. The school committee race, Molly Cochran, 1,461 votes. Erdem Ural, 777. Then, on the Selectmen side, it was a close race throughout the night. And in the end, it was Bob O'Regan and Bob Cohn winning the 2 seats available. Bob O'Regan winning re-election and Bob Cohn winning a first term on the Selectmen. Bob O'Regan coming in first with 1,100 votes, and Bob Cohn with 1,034. Cynthia Walsh was edged by just 21 votes, coming in third at 1,013, and Peter Brown with 823. So again, the winners this evening, O'Regan and Cohn on the Selectmen side, and Molly Cochran on the school committee side. Let's start with a general overview. As a former town administrator, you were the interim town manager here. How does an election potentially shape your job or change your job as a town employee? What impact can an election have? We saw a very wide-changing election last year where it was really a demand for change and a demand for non-incumbents really took the day. This year, it's been a little bit all over the place. I can't really come up with a surefire term for what this election was, because you have an incumbent winning, you have a non-incumbent winning, you have somebody on the school committee side who is first time, and I know that was 2 different camps in that being favored by a few of the sitting members of the school committee. It just doesn't really fit neatly into a box. So that being said, back to my question, as a town employee, how does a election result impact your job?
Well, an election result can have significant impact. And let's go back a little bit historically. Let's talk about the race which involved the time when Frank Crimmins was the town manager. The shift in the dynamics of the race changed, if you will, the balance of power in terms of the votes which took place on the Board of Selectmen, which to a large extent, and I won't speak for Frank Crimmins, but nonetheless, he chose to resign from his position, which resulted in my becoming the interim town manager. So in that particular race, in terms of the dynamic to shift, they were not the same Board of Selectmen when he took office. Election changed that circumstances changed, he moved on.
Not to speculate too much, but from the school committee side, if the results were different tonight, could the superintendent of schools, who has butted heads with Erda Murrell, could she have been, if he had won, thoughts like that been going through her head?
Well, you know, as you know, the superintendent and I are dear friends. You know, we were able to bridge the divide between the both ends of Pearl Street when I came as interim town manager. I certainly think, based upon what has transpired over the past year, and it was, you know, in what you saw as far as the, I would call it the non-relationship that existed between the chair and the superintendent, the fact that she was looking, as you know, and I'm not speaking out of school because it was reported in the paper, she was a finalist for the Dartmouth superintendent, which she was unsuccessful for, but nonetheless that shows that she was looking to make moves. I believe that if Dr. Euro was successful, that more probable than not, you may have seen a lot of shifts in a lot of different ways. Other members of the school committee, as well as the possibility of the superintendent. So I think that you know, there were some people who are absolutely pleased by the result in the school committee race, and it certainly will move forward. But I'd like to also point out that another observation that I just made here. If you look at out of the 8 precincts in the selectmen's race, Mr. O'Regan won 3 of those precincts. He won precinct 1, precinct 2, and precinct 4.
Yes.
Mr. Cohn won precincts 5, precinct 6. And I'm not getting into the seconds and all of that. Ms. Walsh won precinct 7 and precinct 8.
And Peter
Brown won precinct 3. So again, you start to look at, in terms of the trends, you just look at the numbers of votes where they are. If you look at the number of votes cast in precincts 4, 6, and 3 cast the majority of the votes, you know, throughout the entire piece. So we're going to be able to have some trends, Jeffrey, when we start talking about things in the future, because we have last year to look at, we have this year to look at. We think last year may have been an aberration simply because of the issues on the table. And one of the questions you were positing to me, I think, in the question was, there wasn't really a singular issue. There was no silver bullet in this particular election, which establishes.
There was last year.
Yes.
Last year in town, there was the contract issue, municipal and school side, that really rallied a group of candidates and propelled them into office.
That's correct.
There was not an issue this year, and I think you see from the results where I'm going to make go out on a limb here and say that I'm going to guess that the majority of Stoughton voters didn't all vote for the winners, even if they. I'm not necessarily thinking that O'Regan and Cohn's camp and Cochran's camps were all drawing from the same people.
I think
the numbers showed that.
If you do analysis of the numbers, it clearly showed it, because I was really surprised when the numbers came out in precinct 8. I really, you know, the way that if the tracking and there's you know, I can't quickly scan all of the precincts and do that type of analysis, but when we got to precinct 8 and I saw the numbers as they came out, really was a surprise for me. And you were right on point. You said, if the candidate, if Ms. Walsh was going to be able to overtake that delta between her and Cohn, she would have to top the ticket in precinct 8, which she did, but not by enough. And that Cohn would have had to get the least number of votes in that precinct, and that did happen.
Again, but not by enough.
But not by enough.
Now, the next thing, fallout-wise from an election, of course, is the shift of power on the boards themselves.
Yes.
And in the school committee, Dr. Ural was the chair of that committee for the last year. And so now that committee will be looking for a chair, and so that balance of power is automatically going to shift. On the selectmen, with switching out Cohn in place of Walsh, that balance of power now changes. Do you see the shift in power at all towards another member on the selectmen, or do you see it staying where it is right now, which is currently held by TJ Recupero
Well,
as the chair.
well, I'll go by anecdotal because, you know, I'm the FBI Feaster Bureau of Investigation. And what I've heard that, yes, there probably will be a shift in the chairmanship on the Board of Selectmen. And I'm not going to posit what the shift will be. I'd rather have it, I'm going to follow the Bob Cohn tack, let them speak amongst themselves. And on that, on the school committee side, I've heard some interesting things as to what the possible shift as to who may be the candidate. And you know, I'm going to go out on the limb on that one to show that maybe I am in the know, but it might be Katie.
I agree. I think that
Yeah.
Katie Anokian and Joyce Husseini, if you're going to put favorites to become the next chair, I would say those are the next. I would say those are your two favorites to become chair of the school committee.
Yes.
Given how the election took out.
Yeah.
So I don't believe we're going to be able to speak to the two other candidates who won this evening, Bob O'Regan and Molly Cochran.
But we can congratulate
We
them.
can certainly congratulate all the winners this evening.
Yeah.
And again, before signing off, I would just like to do due diligence and go over the results before bidding everyone a good night. So let's go over the results again. Let's bring up those sheets, Eric. We'll start off with the school committee side. On school committee, in first place, Molly Cochran with 1,461 votes. Erna Murrell coming in second with 777. Molly Cochran, first-time candidate, elected to a 3-year term on the school committee. Shifting gears to the selectmen's race, close throughout the evening. Bob O'Regan, re-elected, taking first place with 1,100 votes. Winning the other seat by a margin of just 21. Bob Cohn, he came in with 1034. Cynthia Walsh, the other incumbent in this year's race, she came in third with 1013. And Peter Brown, current Finance Committee member, with 823. The town moderator, Howard Hanson, topping all the candidates, he was unopposed for a 1-year term as moderator with 1,534 votes. There was 12.8% voter turnout this year, which meant that more than 87% of Stoughton voters stayed home, which is perhaps the most disappointing news of the evening.
And finally, I think, Jeff, we can end on a note of saying that with the town meeting representatives, another dismal showing with regards to the inability to complete the number of town meeting representatives, of which there can be 21 in each one of the 8 precincts.
We did see the town moderator explain that process. This will be posted on our website. You can go back and watch and find out how to become a town meeting representative. Before we sign off, one other election I'd like you to take part in if you're watching this live. I'd like you to go on our Facebook page, the SMAC Facebook page, and I'd like you to vote in a contest that Stoughton High students are having with, it's the Destination Imagination Group. There's a group of students from Stoughton that will be attending the global competition down in Tennessee. They're looking to fundraise money, and they have a t-shirt design that if they win that t-shirt design contest, they win a substantial amount of money towards the amount of money that it would take to get down to Tennessee. The best part about this is they are also raising money to help support the homeless. So the more money they can raise to cover the cost of their trip, the more money that will be available at the end of the day to donate to the homeless in this community. So again, check out our Facebook page for more information on how you can vote in that election. As for this election, it's been another race, another one in the books. The winners of the evening, O'Regan and Cohn at Selectmen, and Cochran at School Committee. I must thank our crew this evening. Of course, my co-host, Joseph Feaster, thank you very much for joining me yet again.
Always great to be here with you, Jeffrey.
I'd like to thank Eric Stankiewicz, who ran the operations for us in the control room this evening and does so for almost all of the meetings here at Town Hall, and deserves a debt of gratitude from all of us for being able to continue to bring coverage of these meetings. I'd like to thank Jordan L. Carey, a senior at Stoughton High School, for tabulating the results and handling our social media posts this evening. And I'd also like to thank Christine Iacobucci, who delivered the results from the town clerk's office up to this desk right here. Final thought before signing off, a quote from Henry Ford. "Don't find fault, find a remedy." And I think that speaks well of an election season and coming up to town meeting and the type of discourse that we hear at the various selectmen meeting and the school committee meetings. So again, don't complain, come up with a solution. I'm Jeffrey Pickette alongside Joseph Feaster, thanking you for tuning in. This has been live election results on Stoughton Media Access. Have a good night.